Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel, where we find ourselves in this strangely, eerily quiet period in the football calendar where the season has effectively finished. We've still got the Champions League final to look forward to on Saturday, of course, but then we'll be into this kind of dead month of June. There's no major tournament to keep us ticking over. But as my missus always likes to remind me, the football is not off for very long. Just as I say, one season has finished, it seems the next one is starting. And I think from a betting perspective, we're that way inclined as well, aren't we? When the season finishes, we're already thinking about next season. Who do we fancy to go well next season? And I'm delighted to say that the bookmakers have released their early prices for title winners and promotion in all four of the top English divisions. Today, we're going to be having an early look at the EFL market. I'm delighted to be joined by our resident football tipster here on Odds Now, Adam Drury. Adam, I know you're an EFL fan yourself. This video in particular is going to be focusing on the Championship, where your team, Watford, lie. Before we dive into the sort of intricacies of this year's betting market, what was your read on the Championship last year in terms of quality? I mean, Leeds and Burnley, two very, very strong teams going out of there. Are you expecting a slightly more open renewal this year?
I think at this stage of the year, you always feel like it might be a little bit more open because the teams that are coming down in our heads are the ones who have obviously badly struggled in the Premier League. And I think at this stage last year as well with Leeds, we knew they were going to be, they just lost the playoff final, and I think there was I think they went off as favourites, and there was a real feeling that they were going to be right up there again as probable league winners. And I don't think we've got that team this time that's in the division and stays there as a team that everybody expects to be right at the top, as certainly as they did with Leeds. You say there were two dominant teams. Like, I think in reality, Leeds were the best team by a mile.
Agreed.
And only snuck over the line really because of goalkeeping errors, which is something they should have addressed earlier in the season. I mean, without a few of those howlers from Meslier in goal, they'd have won the league by 10 plus points. So I suppose with them going up, that it's going to be interesting to see how they fare in the Premier League, because they're probably the best promoted team maybe since Fulham under Marco Silva a few years ago, I'd say. But in terms of what they leave behind, we're going to come on. I'm going to come on to one of the relegated teams I see as a very strong favourite, but I don't think there's necessarily the quality left in the league that can match what Leeds were last year. And it gives, I mean, we saw in 24-25, the number of teams who felt they were in with a sniff of a playoff place until quite late in the season was amazing, really. You could be 13th, 14th, win a couple of games and still have a shot. Blackburn nearly got over the line, having lost lots of games at the end of Millwall. And from a Watford perspective, it felt like we lost every week in the second half of the season, and we still had a shot with 2 or 3 weeks to play. So, expecting it to certainly be very open in that area of the table. And I think there is maybe more of a possibility of teams coming out of the pack up towards the top, including, of course, we've got the different dynamic this year of Birmingham and Wrexham coming out of League One into the Championship and expecting to compete up near the top as well. So, yeah, slightly different dynamic to last year, but opportunities for near enough every team in the league to give it a crack, certainly of getting into the top 6.
Yeah, it's a very interesting lineup, I must say. When I was putting this, I'm going to put a ticker along the bottom of the screen just so you can see all these odds. But yeah, a difficult one to price, I think. And I think it should be said that at this early stage, we're not putting teams up with much conviction here. Obviously, it goes without saying that there's a lot of water to come under the bridge between now and kickoff in August. All kinds of transfer business to be done. Managers, we're still seeing managers depart even last night, which altered our thinking ahead of this video. More on that to come. But yeah, so I mean, look, there's a lot of moving parts. This is just our initial feel on the market. And I suppose bookmakers are doing the same thing here, really. They're putting the feelers out, putting some tentative odds up, not giving too much away, and just seeing what teams get nibbled at, I suppose. And if we take a look at this Championship early show, Ipswich are the 9-2 favourites with all bookmakers across the board. Southampton come next at 13-2. Then it's the playoff runners-up Sheffield United, cruelly denied by Sunderland. They're 9-1 for the title. Birmingham, a big talking point, I'm sure, 10-1 to seal that double promotion and double title win. And then you've got Middlesbrough 10s, Coventry 12s, Leicester out of 14s, Norwich 18s, and it's 20s bar beyond that with Wrexham, one of the teams in that bracket as well. So I guess we dive straight in then, Adam. Looking at those title odds, you said that there was a team that jumped off the page to you as the obvious favourites for this division. Let's not leave people in mystery any longer. It's Ipswich that you're leaning towards at this early point. Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the early prices and the opportunity to maybe get on some big prices, and I've gone straight in with the favourites. I thought maybe before it was priced up, I was expecting Ipswich and Southampton to be a little bit closer than they are actually in terms of early prices. But yeah, personally, I can't see past Ipswich certainly as a safe bet for a team that I think will almost certainly be in the mix up at the top. For quite a few, I think it looks like Kieran McKenna will be staying at the club as manager. Let's not forget, 12 months ago, he was rated as absolutely one of the best possible head coaches in the country. Spoke to Manchester United, Chelsea, Brighton, ended up staying at Ipswich to give it a crack with them in the Premier League. It's not quite worked out, but it's also not fallen apart enough to suggest that actually coming down into the Championship, they're in bad shape or the club is in tatters like you sometimes see. Potentially we're going to see with Leicester next season, who don't feel in such good nick as a club. There's going to be consistency in the approach, in the way that they play. It doesn't look like there's going to be too much pressure to sell key players, except obviously for Liam Delap, who's going to leave, it looks like, for Chelsea. That's going to bring 30 million in straight away. And I don't think there'll be too much pressure to sell other star players. So if you look at their squad, the likes of Amari Hutchinson, Sammy Schmodix, Jack Clark, Jaden Philogene, these are guys who they brought into the Premier League as young, really exciting players who I think have a future at that level. It's not quite happened for them. Maybe bar Schmodix, who's a little bit older, but a very, very consistent, capable, top-end Championship player. They've got Ogbene, who they brought in from Luton as well. And then, yeah, even at the back, Jacob Greaves, Dara O'Shea, Leif Davis is maybe another who potentially could move on this summer. Maybe one or two of these will be sold. But I think in general, there's some incredible strength in depth there. And it's held together by McKenna. As a Watford fan, I've seen Watford squads relegated from the Premier League had a team with Joao Pedro and Ismail Assar for a whole Championship campaign that finished 11th a couple of years ago, which was a pretty poor effort. But that could be put down to the chaos really behind the scenes and in the coaching. Ipswich look like they're going to be very consistent. McKenna stays. We know he's going to hold the whole thing together. Quality coaching, the strategy, and then the quality of these individuals. I'd be very surprised if they're not right in the mix. And I think they're deserving favourites. I just feel like their story isn't finished. I don't think that was a one-off promotion and they gave it their all and now they're back down here to stay. I feel like that's a club with more to give and there's more to go in this little era of theirs. So yeah, strong favourites for me are Ipswich, and I think 9-2 is a bigger price than Leeds went off as favourites last year. So yeah, I like the look of that a lot.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think Leeds went off around the 3-1 mark. So 9-2 for the favourites. It certainly does indicate to a more open-looking division, but you're making a good, compelling case for Ipswich there. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does really hinge around McKenna, I think, a lot of this, and just the continuity and the understanding of the group, the division and all this. And I think we talk about, so much time between now and August, if anything did change with Kieran McKenna, that would presumably make you have a quite a strong rethink on 9-2 about Ipswich.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they are a club who I'd kind of trust to get it right. It feels like they're in a good place, but that has been with McKenna at the helm. We obviously get the impression of calmness and everybody's on the same page, largely because of the way he operates. So yeah, it certainly would change things. And I guess a red flag is some comparison could be drawn to Luton coming down last year with Rob Edwards in charge, staying in charge, generally managing to keep hold of their best players. I just think, and this is speaking in hindsight to an extent, I think Luton came down much more fatigued and kind of battered by the Premier League experience. They'd had if you actually look back at Luton's season, they had a lot of home games which they lost by the odd late goal. They went close quite often. I think it was quite a draining experience. Obviously, the Tom Lockyer incident as well, which took a lot out of, I think, the whole club. And Edwards himself, who looked pretty knackered from the beginning of last season back in the Championship. My sense is that Ipswich have a lot more energy and a lot more to give coming down than maybe Luton did. But yeah, you're right. McKenna is a big part of that. If McKenna stays with this squad, I'd be very surprised if they're not in title contention. So yeah, that's why it's an early lean, I suppose.
Certainly is. Well, as you say, Ipswich 92 favourites for the title. Southampton and Sheffield United following them in the market, but we will come on to them when we just have a quick word on the other contenders. But I'll skip forward to my early lean, which is perhaps slightly less bulletproof and with a little bit more, should we say, a margin for error. Could go either way, I think, this, but Birmingham at 10-1, it just leaps off the page for me when I look at this Championship renewal. And I think there's a lot of teams here who, and I don't want to be disrespectful here, there's not a lot to split them. Bit of a muchness. And Birmingham are that wild card in amongst the pack, aren't they? Because they've obviously dropped down, spent their time in League One. They've had all this fanfare around the new ownership and the change of management. But the rebuild that we saw last season and the sheer financial power injected into the squad, I think there was a net spend of around £25 million last year in League One. That obviously brought a lot of ridicule from other fans, sort of saying, well, yeah, you should walk the league when you spend that much money. And that's all true. But we've seen time and again in football that spending money does not always equal success. You still have to do it in the right and proper way. And I think you can't help but be impressed with the way that Birmingham have gone about their recruitment. They've really unearthed some really, really talented players from unusual sort of teams. And I think that is a really, really positive indicator to me that they're not just going to throw money at big names. I suppose the Stansfield signing was possibly a little bit of throwing money at a big name, but equally, I think it was there with reason and purpose. Somebody that understood the club, that was going to be able to grow with the club, and already has Championship experience. And there's quite a few players in here who are, relatively proven at this level or an equivalent level in Europe. So I don't worry about the transition. They've won the league with a record points haul. I think it was 111 points in the end, it's quite obscene, really. And we saw what they could do in an FA Cup tie against Newcastle, where they gave as good as they got against a strong Newcastle side for large periods. Really, really enjoyed their performance there. And just the whole noise around the club, to me, this doesn't feel like a club that are willing to sit and wait around 2 or 3 years to get into the Premier League. There's a lot of money there, a lot of ambition there, a lot of fanfare, similar to the fellow promoted side, Wrexham. But I just feel like the infrastructure with Birmingham is a lot more ready to instantly challenge for promotion. I think a couple of years ago, we would have said that this double promotion from League One to the Premier League is relatively unattainable. But Ipswich, obviously, already talked about them, proved that theory wrong and showed that it can be done. Ipswich themselves only have to go back to their League One season, where despite losing the title to Plymouth Argyle, a lot of good judges were saying this is the best League One team we've ever seen. And sure enough, they went straight into the Championship and got up into the Premier League. So if we use that kind of line of thought, Birmingham here look every bit as good as that Ipswich side did in League One. I think they're going to spend big again this summer. I've read a lot with Tom Wagner, the owner, talking about, he seems like a very clever man financially who knows ways of balancing the PSR kind of issues of this world. And he's already talked about the amount of sponsorship that they're bringing in, which allows them to spend lots of money if they want to in the summer. I'm expecting some real marquee signings to come in again and take an already talented squad forward. And I think ultimately, I am just looking at this renewal, and I totally understand and agree with your points about Ipswich being probably the most solid of the 3 relegated sides by a distance. But I don't think there's a Leeds in there that I'm terrified of. I do think if Birmingham get off to a good start, they really could be tough to stop in this division. And I was a little bit surprised. I mean, I suppose they have just come up from League One, so some people will probably scoff at that 10-1, but I actually thought they might be single figures. So that 10-1, I'm very tempted. I don't like playing this early, but I do feel like this is a price where 2 weeks into the season, they're either going to have halved in price or doubled in price. And I'm leaning towards halved in price. So, yeah, it's tempting to maybe get them on side. But in terms of an early lean, it would be Birmingham for me. We are going to also have a little look at the promotion market, and I will just sort of, not keep you waiting there. I'm also the 3-1 about them being promoted as well. It will be my lean in that market. But before we do that, let's just get back on to the other contenders. Feel free to chip in with your thoughts on Birmingham at this point as well, Adam, as well, and shoot me down if you wish. But
I think you're definitely right that the 111 points, it was around that, wasn't it? Translates into, I feel like translates into automatically being one of the best teams in the Championship. You're not coming up as relegation fodder with that kind of points tally. And you're right that the ambition and the money they're going to spend, they absolutely expect to be up there. And I suspect they're very likely to win promotion in the next 3 years. That's the direction they're going in as a club. My only concern would be that the football they played in League One was so possession dominant. We were seeing 75-80% kind of possession percentages in games, particularly home games against teams towards the bottom of the league. And they actually at times struggled to create a lot of chances for all of the ball that they had. Now, I think Birmingham fans would say that's because the opposition, lined up with 11 men across the goal line pretty much and stopped them scoring. And so, yeah, for sure, teams will open up against them a bit more, but that means they're going to be tested more defensively. And I do think slow possession, even if it's 65-70% of the ball, it's not going to be quite as effective against Championship teams who can break on them quickly, who are going to be more potent attacking threats, who can defend better, even if they don't defend in the same way. So I think there might have to be a little adaptation of style where they're prepared to have less of the ball and maybe need to find a way to create more chances. But you're right, with the ambition, the money, the players they've already got, I'm sure they're going to be up there.
Yeah, I think you're right to make that point. And just as you gave a red flag about Ipswich, my red flag would possibly be the manager, Chris Davies. He's done fantastic in his first season in League One. Really, really impressive. I remember I was here 12 months ago kind of saying, oh, the manager's the only question mark for me with Birmingham and stuff. And look, he proved that to be false concerns. But again, this is a fresh test, isn't it? You're talking about that tactical flexibility and the ability to adapt and learn quickly and change things. And that's all going to be sort of new stuff for us to see how he handles that. But yeah, I just think out of when I'm looking, and we're going to touch on these other contenders here, but when I'm looking at teams in a similar price bracket, Middlesbrough, Sheffield United, Coventry, all really good sides that I respect, but I don't see like immediate reasons why they're going to suddenly leap forward and be dominant in the division. Whereas I think Birmingham, they are a bit of a wild card element. They do have the potential to kick on and be a real force in the division. So that's why I would lean that way out of those. Before we go on to, I know you've got an outsider that you're going to sort of flag as one at a big price that might be of interest. But before we go down that route, we've got Southampton here 15-2, Sheffield United 9-1, Middlesbrough 10-1, Coventry 12s, Leicester 14s, and Norwich 18s. Out of those other teams that we've not put up as an early lean, why have they not come onto your radar, and who was kind of close to coming onto your radar out of those, if any?
I think Southampton definitely come down with a talented squad, got some decent young players. Hopefully they can keep hold of a few of them. Looks like Dibbling will probably go, maybe Fernandez as well. But they've got some decent players. I think Will Still coming in, he's really highly rated, done a good job at a couple of different clubs in France. It's just a bit of an unknown. We're just not quite sure. It's disruption there rather than the continuity at Ipswich.
I agree. It's the exact same thing for me with Southampton. Yeah. I like the squad, but I just first job in England, it's a lot to ask to win the Championship. But I mean, they're another one where if they start well, the price could go pretty quickly.
And I think with him, there's a lot of noise around him and hype around him, which is obviously great. Like he's maybe one of the best English hopefuls in terms of coaching at the moment. But it feels like a big job for him, just because of the amount of almost this myth of Will Still from France.
Do you know that his club have to pay a fee every game because he doesn't have a pro license?
I know.
I don't know if anyone's ever heard that before.
It is an incredible story. And listen, he's clearly very, very good. So he could get it moving really quickly and really well. And every chance they'll be up there. I think the one of the clubs you've listed, I'd probably mention Coventry as one. A team I expect to be up there again.
Finished well, didn't they, last season?
Finished well. Frank Lampard did well to take them into the top 6. I think they were actually doing better than better than results would have suggested in the first stage of the season as well. I think Lampard came in and inherited a team that was actually very capable and is a top 6 standard squad. So if they can keep hold of their best players, I know Jack Radoni has, I think, got a little bit of Premier League interest, but if they can keep hold of their best players and add to it, they're just at a level, Coventry, where you expect them to be around the top 6 every single season now. And
he's got a lot of championship experience now, hasn't he, as well, Lampard? Yeah. Like, he's had a few different tilts with a few different teams. He knows the league. And I remember actually mentioning it on an EFL betting show with Gab Sutton that Coventry, in underlying metrics halfway through last season when Lampard came in, they were like a top 4, top 5 team already. So, I mean, he just converted that into actual points, didn't he? So totally see what you're thinking there. Leicester are an interesting one, aren't they, at 14-1? Because they've obviously, when we see Leicester come down into the Championship, you never expect them to be that kind of price. You'd expect them to be more where Ipswich and Southampton are, and traditionally relegated clubs from the Premier League are in the top 3 or 4 in the betting. But there's problems at the club there, isn't there? Potential points deduction with PSR stuff incoming. Jamie Vardy obviously left. There's a bit of unrest in the back room, so that it does put you off. But I must admit, I had Leicester down as a one that at the prices, I think they're like 9-2 for promotion. Like, that could look massive as well, couldn't it? In a few weeks into the season.
Yeah, I guess I think everything about Leicester screams red flag, except we see teams come down from the Premier League and the gap is so big that they're just automatically a decent side at this level, almost regardless of the state of the club. That's not definitely the case, as we've seen with Luton, but generally teams will come down and find a way to...
They've done it before, haven't they, Leicester? Come down under a bit of a cloud and then been really, really good at the level. And I think just like, I remember the last time they were in the Championship, players like Mavididi and stuff, they're just like really, really good at this level. And I do just have this niggling feeling that 9-2 about promotion for Leicester could be a one that detracts in price quite quickly. But
sounds like Russell Martin might be their new manager, so that'll be interesting. That's kind of a longer term process appointment, really, isn't it? Rather than well, he did do it with Southampton, but he's not a come in, get you up and go kind of guy. He didn't
do it that convincingly though, did he? You know, they had to scramble through the playoffs, and they were unfancied in those playoffs as well. But I think Martin, like you say, he brings good and bad points with his arrival, but it feels more projecty potentially. We could list all the teams, but obviously this is just a quick run through of the early betting. There was one at an absolutely massive price that you just wanted to flag as an interesting outsider, and that was Portsmouth, 33-1 to be promoted. Obviously had their first season back in the Championship last season, stayed up with relative comfort under John Mousinho. It's a massive club, obviously Premier League history in the not so distant past. You're expecting them to take another step forward this season?
Yeah, definitely. I actually went to Fratton Park a few weeks ago when Watford went down there and Portsmouth beat us 1-0. And the energy in the stadium and the way that they play, particularly at home, I think with using that home support and the real belief behind the team that they've got at the moment, they're a really, really dangerous home team. Very, very difficult nut to crack, and got some good attacking players as well. This is a bit of a punt because I don't think they're realistically going to be in top 2 contention, but I think they can join that pack of teams that can be in top 6 contention until very late in the season.
Kind of a Bristol City ilk of last season. Yeah.
Well, I've got a few notes here, and what I've written down is almost that Millwall mould of club who you expect to kind of be knocking around 7th to 12th. I think they can join that pack. They took 37 points from their last 17 home games, so the home record was absolutely fantastic in the second half of the season. In 2025, they were 7th in terms of pure points and 9th for expected points. So they're kind of at the level now of a team that you expect to be in the mix. And a big part of that is Jacob Murphy, who was arguably one of the best attackers in the whole division, arguably the best and certainly one of the best. I think he got the joint most assists in the league. Colby Bishop is a striker who's finding his feet at that level. Just feels like they're on the up, and if they can keep that home record going and really harness that belief, that seems to be there among the fan base. I think they can be clear of relegation and join that pack of teams who could sneak into the top 6. They're probably not going to compete with Ipswich, Southampton, whoever else we expect to be up there. But certainly a team to watch, and I think they were probably better than they'll get credit for the season just gone because of a few bad early results as they settled into the level. But in the second half of the season, they were one of the best teams in the league, and as long as they can keep hold of Murphy and Bishop, and maybe add even more, then I don't see why they can't be in that top 6 conversation.
Yeah, I like it. And look at the price. It's absolutely ginormous. I mean, they're priced 23rd of the 24 teams in here in terms of their promotion potential, which just does feel harsh, really, given the trajectory they appear to be on. And the club, but I think they obviously had a very rocky period during their time in League One and a lot of instability. They're kind of the opposite of that now, aren't they? I just look at them and just think they're in a really, really solid place. And we always see a couple of teams like Bristol City and Millwall this season just gone who can outrun their odds, and Portsmouth. Definitely worth flagging there at Ginorm's 33-1. That is just for promotion as well. So obviously we've got other markets still to come up in the Championship. Top 6 betting not available yet, top half and bottom half, relegation. So these markets will start to filter up over the next few weeks, and rest assured during the remainder of the off season we will be previewing them in depth here on Odds Now. But that just about concludes our Championship first look at the early promotion and title markets. And just to recap quickly, Adam is quite strong on Ipswich for the title at a general 9-2. I've made a little bit of a case for Birmingham at 10-1 with Bet365, and our outside shout to outrun their odds is Portsmouth 33-1 for promotion. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know in the comments who your early favourites are for the Championship next season. Any teams you expect to outrun their odds. If you think the favourites are false as well, love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. We'll be doing videos for League One and League Two, so keep your eyes peeled and make sure you watch them again. Give us a thumbs up and a subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you again on Odds Now very soon. Thanks for watching.